impact of technologies, as well as on governance, risk, and compliance. Let me start by introducing our first panel, and actually the moderator to start with, who will in turn introduce the panel. The moderator for the next discussion is Mr. Thomas Ustri. I hope I got that right, Thomas? Thomas is the Chief EPM Strategist for Oracle's Industrial Business Unit, or Industries Business Unit. As a member of Oracle's Industries Business Unit, Thomas is an integral part of the development and definition of Oracle's thought leadership. His unique expertise gives him exclusive insight into the market landscape. It also allows him to anticipate change and envision the next practices within Oracle and industry-wide. He is responsible for the development of strategic initiatives, such as the value of information or continuous business transformation. Thomas was the main architect of Oracle's Management Excellence, Thought Leadership, and the Strategy to Success framework. His knowledge and insight plays a key role in ensuring that the EPM team maintains its leadership position in the market. Dedicated to customer service and with his thorough approach and tremendous experience in developing BI and PM solutions, he is widely acknowledged a trusted advisor for customers. I'll hand it over to Thomas.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon. I hope you all enjoyed the lunch as much as I did. And I'm very pleased that I have the pleasure to be here at this wonderful conference, and an impressive number of senior executives who are here today. And, some of you had the pleasure to actually play golf yesterday in Germany. Just by show of hands, how many of you had the chance to play golf? Okay, seems to be a smaller group. Anyway, my flight where I would have participated is seriously happy that I did not participate. My golf is at its very beginning, so I have to say that I have clubs, yes, but that's it. But our subject today is actually what my job role is all about. It's the question, how can we use technology, and how should we use technology to support the business? And for today's discussion, my colleagues and fellow panelists will focus on how can business intelligence and other parts like EPM support finance and improve business overall. And I would like to start with my own perspective, but taking a number that I got from a survey from CFO Innovation Asia that was sponsored by Oracle. It was like 139 companies responded, and there was the question, do you believe that a properly functioning enterprise performance management system enhances the efficiency, productivity, and profitability of companies? And 83% responded yes. We believe that the enterprise performance management system improves profitability, efficiency, and effectiveness. And from my over 20 years of history in this industry and business, I can tell there is a big change in it. If we would have asked 5 or 10 years ago, no one would have said yes, because there was no enterprise performance management system. There were just tools and applications. So if I take the overall perspective from a few decades, I would say what's currently happening is the second wave in how this CFO and finance department is supported by technology. And the first big wave was some 15 years ago with ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. And I'm pretty sure all of you have an ERP system. Even so, without being cynical, I would say the very last thing you do with your ERP system is planning your enterprise resources. Certainly not what you do with it. What you really do with it is run your transactions, your business processes. And the job of technology is first to standardize, automate, and integrate, up to the point where you can't get any faster. So today transactions run a millisecond, and there's no meaning in making it faster. But the question is, did it ever deliver superior performance, did it ever deliver competitive advantage? And the answer is certainly yes, for the early adapters. The first ones to implement ERP systems had a competitive advantage over their competitors. They could reduce cost, improve quality, and increase the speed. Nowadays, ERP is more or less a license to play. You have to have it. It's not a differentiation anymore. But what I think, what we see, and this is the emergence of an EPM system, that performance management as a system is the next wave and the next competitive advantage you can gain. And I would like to talk about this a little bit more with my panelists today, of how technology can do that and what the specific aspects of this really are. And with that said, before I sit down, I would love to introduce the panelists. And I'll start from your perspective, from the left side. We have Andrea Costantini, I hope I got it right, Andrea, who is Italian. And the reason why I mention this is because we have 3 continents represented today. So we have Italy and Germany. And he is the Chief Financial Officer of a company called Shima Ship Management, which is owned by an even larger organization out of Italy. Andrea has very special expertise, and in this area and region he's probably very well known as an expert in risk management and compliance and governance. And before he decided to actually run finance departments and organizations, for almost 10 years he was an auditor, so he can represent both perspectives from the outside as an auditor as well as running finance organizations, with a focus on this one. Next to Andrea, I'm happy to introduce Shakib Abizar, and he represents Latin America. He's from Venezuela, so welcome here as well. Shakib works for a company called Bumi Amanda, is that correct? Well spent. And over lunch I learned a lot about oil exploration and the future of oil prices. But I'm not sharing secrets, right? And he's actually the Chief Information Officer of this company. And it's wonderful that he represents what I would think of the modern CIO, because he doesn't have a technology background, he has a business background. So he has a bachelor and an MBA, or master in business administration, and has more than 15 years experience in IT. So this is pretty much what we discussed today, which is what is the business perspective and what is the technology perspective. And the third gentleman that I would love to introduce today, from India, is Sirish Kumar. And Sirish Kumar has a great track record for 2 things that I found very interesting. One is integrating large organizations and acquisitions at Motorola, where you currently work, as well as supporting from a finance perspective and actually driving very fast-growing businesses. Impressive numbers from 5 million to 100 million in a very short time. So you can enlighten us a little bit about what technology means for fast-growing companies and what technology means for integration of companies. So with that said, I would like to move over to my moderator seat and ask one of you to start with your perspective of our subject today. So who wants to start? Yeah.
Good afternoon to everybody. Let's say I just touched a bit about my experience. I work in the shipping industry. I think it can be an interesting topic, because when we talk about integration, business analytics, there are definitely certain industries where integration and business partnering with IT function is not a choice but is a necessity. Shipping is an industry where people and assets are not in physical space, but they trade, they move, and in an industry where the assets are $1 million assets, and the people are, of course, people that are working in this trading asset. I start from this element in the sense that being a CFO, also in charge for the IT matter, I have, let's say, started my experience, my operational experience as a CFO. I think realized from the beginning the importance of spending time in business partnering with the IT function and the CIO of the company. Because, as I said before, this is definitely not a choice, it's a necessity, it's something that is requested, not only to be competitive on the market, because we all know that information is very important, but because also the use of the information is a key point, especially in a fast-moving business like shipping. So let's say I spend a lot of time, and I don't see, of course, as a waste of time in trying to understand how to integrate as much as possible in the value chain. So starting from the supply chain management up to the let's say sales side, and how to make sure that all the information is stored properly, is integrated, and of course this is a long-term planning to do business partners in the organizations, because sometimes I think we also don't know what we have on the shelf, in the sense that we might start working with companies that have done investments in the past, that have spent money not only for implementation but also for buying software, for buying applications. So I always say, let's start with what we have in-house, let's start to see how much we can use, because I think we also have to be humble. I think there's room to say that we don't, I think probably none of us use the 100%, or probably not even 80% of the potentialities of the software that we have in use. So this is my view. Let's say that the technology is already there, right? It can be already in our house or can be bought in the market. We all expect from CFOs to be good in analyzing data. We all expect from CSO to be very good and fast in reporting. Probably the next step involves to move from, let's say, more static views in analyzing what technology made us available, but grow also in terms of forecasting, in terms of optimization, and as we said this morning, not only analyzing the result, that is something very important, but spending more time on the roots that have derived some numbers, because sometimes let's say the future happenings can be also influenced by our decisions. And as a CFO, we all have an important role, the CIO as well, and this one has to be taken into consideration, because the expectations in seeing us as a business partner, also for influencing the route, and then in this case the drivers, is quite high.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Very interesting. Shakib, would you like to give us your perspective?
Okay, good afternoon. I've always found it interesting to talk to a group of people after lunch. I find that it's difficult to keep them awake, so I'll try to be quick. Anyways, in today's business environment, there is one thing that is common to every industry and every company, and it's data. We get more and more data, and that data is being stored somewhere. What we do financially, operationally, tons of data, more and more and more every day. So with that comes the question, what do we do with that data to gain a competitive edge? And that is where tools like business intelligence come into place, because what these tools do for us is they are able to look at our databases and provide information in a way that we need to analyze, either for to understand efficiencies, to understand trends, and to understand financial stability at one particular time or in a period of time. So it is extremely important in today's business environment that the proper technology to to gather the information that we need is chosen. And in order to do this, there is one thing that is key. The Chief Information Officer and the Chief Financial Officers need to be on the exact same page. They need to understand exactly what they need to see so that the CIO can work on the technical aspects to provide what the CFO in this case requires. But it's a little more than that. This is business intelligence is not simply for CFOs and CIOs. This is for operations as a whole. Identifying trends, understanding what can you do from operations to improve the financial standings of the organization, given the trends that you see from past, etc. That is where I see that today we need to focus on the technology when it comes to business intelligence. Strategic financial planning, similarly, there are currently several very interesting tools in the market that enable organizations to have forecasting, web-based forecasting tools, for example. More and more companies are going global, multinational. We're in different regions. I did mention this yesterday for those who were here. The biggest pain for most CFOs is closing. And if we can minimize the amount of time that it takes to close on a monthly basis, not only will the organization be more effective, but you can use those resources to focus on some more important tasks. So, being able to identify tools that give you that ability will definitely make you much more efficient. Today, what we are seeing, the trend is starting to appear for web-based tools that enables you to have forecasting and closing numbers. For example, today when we close, usually we have to close our numbers if we're in many countries, we have to wait for managers, CFOs, or anybody in the finance department in other countries to verify the information, and usually it takes days going back and forth trying to understand what they want us to change. If we have web-based tools where they can actually go, check the numbers, make changes, and there can be an audit trail of who made what changes, then your closing would go from 1 week or 2 weeks to 2 days. And that is where we should be focusing at this particular time when we talk about how to enhance strategic financial planning. Forecasting and minimizing the amount it takes to close.
Thank you very much, Shakib. At this time, I would like to mention, thanks to you, after our wonderful panel discussion, I had 20 minutes to talk about financial closing processes. So, if you're still interested, stay. I'll talk about this a little bit. And thank you very much. It's a very important technology aspect that you mentioned that we want to maybe explore a little further later on, which is web-based technologies, because it dramatically changes rolling out such things. For that, Shirish, would you like to give your perspective of this?
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. I think CFO stands for Chief Fund Officer and CEO stands for See Everything optimistically. So now, if you really relate that to a CIO, where does CIO really fit in? And then you really start saying, okay, he sees from his eyes everything optimistically. So now you have 3 kinds of people or 3 kinds of organizations where you see it in a growth setup or you see it in a stable setup. What I would spend some time talking here about is when you go into a growth curve and when it's a fashion to go into emerging markets, what role does the ERP system, what role does integration really play? Is it really important from a practical standpoint to delay it, to we do the minimum turnover or minimum business or we set the teams? Is there a need for a critical mass before we really say, okay, let's implement an integration process in a particular region? So that's one question that we should face. The second would be, in terms of the view of CFO, where does he stand? Is he today a scorekeeper or is he a strategist? Are you working in a centralized environment or are you working in a decentralized environment? And the third question is, where does the business see the CFO to make strategic decisions? Is he a business partner in general, or there are certain specific areas where the CFO should be a business partner? Now, if you have answers to any of these three questions, then it comes to the next stage of really saying, what's the approach to achieve that business objective? And how do you convert a complex language like middleware, various modules or R3 or whatever it is, to convey that same language to a businessman or to a chief operating officer? So I think these are the 3-4 things that I would bring in as an experience to say that while we do implement system integration initiatives across many countries and geographies, there are certain common issues which keep coming up every time we do this. And I think it's very important how you communicate that to the larger organization. And if the CFO and the CIO are very well equipped with information and justification, which aligns to the overall balanced scorecard, then it makes sense. Kaplan's scorecard, which we just studied when I went to INSEAD for the first time. I read about the balanced scorecard saying revenue growth and trying to reduce productivity. But now you see, after the crisis, there's one more element that's come in, which is risk management. So can you, as a CFO, drive risk within the overall strategy? And how does the technology come in? So these are the few things that I think become relevant in the overall corporate environment.
Thank you very much. And you also mentioned some very interesting points that we might touch upon. One is centralized versus decentralized. I think that's really interesting. But there's one thing that came in my mind while you were introducing your thoughts, and I'm going back to several years ago, and it was the role of the CFO, and it was a bit discussed this morning as well. As a more maybe provocative statement, I would say, thanks to technology that we have today, the CFO is able to extend his role to what I tend to call the chief non-financial officer. The reason is, in history, so to speak, the most reliable place to go for any C-level to get a number that is reliable is finance. What happens, thanks to technology, in particular business intelligence, I would say, is that more and more companies see that the CFO is in charge of also delivering all the operational numbers and spreading them across the company. So it becomes the melting point of information. So from your experience, maybe we start with you, Andrea, is that something that you see as well, that you see more requests for more numbers and being the thought leader in terms of information delivery?
It's a good point in the sense that technology has, let's say, give us more time to do and focus on strategical matters. On the other side, I see also a strong emphasis on going beyond the numbers. So basically, on one side is let's say is an asset. Technology is an asset. On the other side, I think for us that are, let's say, working as operators as well, sometimes gives a lot of pressure in let's say giving sometimes explanations then when maybe the technology was not available, there was not even time to do. So we maybe spent time and time to revise, even budgeting on forecast, and trigger continuously what we have done. Okay, that on one side is good because triggering data and let's say going beyond the numbers is very good, and it also can bring some strategical insights. On the other side is also, I would say, a weapon, because we might also, let's say, fall in love